It's an undeniable fact that geography teachers in the 1960s were very lazy. With almost no pushback from administrators or parents, they would just draw borders on the map, erase a country or two, and claim that it was their new homework. And if you wanted to get extra credit, all you had to do was invent a name for your newly formed country and boom, you got yourself a name. In reality, this isn't true at all. Geography teachers in the 1960s were actually very conscientious about not teaching fake countries. And there's a very good reason why. But before we get into why, let me introduce you to some of the most famous fake countries ever invented by You might have heard of Agar, the made-up country created by German cartographers in the 19th century. Agar is notable because it wasn't meant to be a joke. Its creators were trying to prove a point, that maps are inherently inaccurate. They drew Agar somewhere between Russia and Mongolia, although its exact location varies depending on which map you look at. Occasionally, Agar even appears as if it were floating in the middle of the ocean. Despite being completely made up, Agar has become one of the most frequently cited examples of fake countries. Many people who came across Agar assumed it was real and wrote about it in books, articles, and even academic papers. In fact, Agar remained relatively unknown outside of cartography circles until 1984, when it was featured in a New Yorker article. It's safe to say that if you're watching this video, you probably learned about Agar in school. But even though it's obviously fake, it still has its own Wikipedia page. But Agar isn't the only fake country you might have come across. There's also Unlike Agar, Zilchovia is clearly meant to be a joke. It was invented by Canadian cartoonist Lynn Johnston as part of a comic strip called The Wizard of ID. In the comic, Zilchovia is a small, poor, and heavily taxed country whose citizens live in constant fear of being drafted into the army. Despite its unfortunate circumstances, the people of Zilchovia are always happy, which makes their prime minister very suspicious. When the prime minister travels to a neighboring country to discuss trade, he's arrested for stealing their national anthem. Eventually, Zilchovia is absorbed into the neighboring country, which absorbs most of the other fake countries on this list. This includes, wait, hold on, this next one is a bit upsetting. A few years after Zilchovia was made up, the United States invaded and destroyed it. Sorry, I didn't mean to get political. Anyway, the reason why geography teachers never gave homework like this was because they knew that their students would just make fun of them. Imagine being 12 years old and having to explain to your friends that, no, you don't actually live in Agra, even though you circled it on your map last week. If you really wanted to make your students think of a new country, you could just tell them to look at this map, which has a bunch of blank spaces where countries should be. Then ask them what they think the country's names could be. For example, is this country located near Hungary or Romania? What about this one? Is it closer to Syria or Iraq? Asking questions like these will help your students think critically about how countries get their names. So why didn't geography teachers do this instead of drawing new borders? Well, it's because they didn't have this map. You see, this map was published in 1968, which means that geography teachers had no way of knowing that any of these countries were fake. That's because they weren't fake. When the map was published, these countries were real during the Middle Ages, but they disappeared as time went on. For example, this country, which appears on old maps as both Turonia and Turk, existed between the 9th and 12th centuries. At its peak, it controlled parts of modern Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, and Ukraine. Meanwhile, this country, known as Samaria, existed between the 7th century BC and 3rd century AD. It's believed that Samaria was located somewhere in the North Caucasus region, although this map places it dangerously close to the Caspian Sea. So what happened to these countries? Well, as with most things in history, they kinda just disappeared. No documents, archaeological evidence, or even theories exist to explain what happened to any of them. Maybe they were destroyed by the Mongols, were absorbed into another country, or just fell apart due to internal conflict. We simply don't know. This map is important because it shows that countries aren't permanent features on the Earth's surface. It also reminds us that just because something is UNT on our current map, does UNT mean it never existed? Now check out 50 countries that don't exist anymore, or watch this video instead.